Nearly 200 kilometres northeast of Amsterdam and around 25 minutes away from Groningen, a city known for its museums and nightlife, sits the hallowed tarmac of the TT Circuit Assen. One of the world's most famous motorsport venues, racing has taken place in this part of the world for 100 years and was the only track on the first Grand Prix calendar back in 1949. Practice is up next live. It's time for MotoGP. So the TT Circuit Assen, Pekka Bagnaya's 1:30.540, the fastest ever lap around this iconic, legendary venue, 4.54 kilometres in length, 18 corners, all one of them providing a unique challenge for both man and machine. Tight first sector as you run through turn 3, 4 and 5. Then a long horsepower drag down through turn 6. Good overtaking opportunities through 7 and 8. And then this magnificent final sector, including the scary turn 15, which has already posed some drama today with Marc Marquez having a heavy crash this morning. Good afternoon and welcome back to the TT Circuit Assen. That is the story of the weekend for so many staunch followers of Grand Prix motorcycle racing in this part of the northeastern Netherlands as we celebrate a centenary of racing in this part of Holland. 1925 was when the first ever motorcycle race action took place in this part of the world. Let's hope that they're still racing in another 100 years' time, because it is, without any question, a world-famous, iconic, historic, legendary venue. 4.54 kilometres, as we said in the build-up. It is just one of the classic Grand Prix circuits. Shortened to its current layout back in 2006, but still a firm fan favourite and still a rider favourite. It's been, so far, on Free Practice Friday, a pretty painful and tough, if ultimately fast experience for our World Championship leader, factory Ducati start Marc Marquez, who did lead the way at the end of FP1 this morning, but it was not without its dramas. The 32-year-old Spaniard, off the back of dominant weekends in both Motorland Aragon and in Mugello, which has moved Marc into a pretty commanding 40-point lead in the World Championship. Well, he took a real heavy tumble this morning on that factory GP25 as he was peeling through the turn 15, fourth gear, 170 kilometers an hour, unfortunately downshifting just that little bit too quick and losing the rear. He picked himself up, he dusted himself down, and he was still able to set the fastest time of the morning session. He was the only rider that did switch over to a new set of Michelin tyres. Marc finding a 1:32.216. Vinales, Maverick Vinales looking great on the KTM once again, was second, and Marco Bezzecchi. Bagnaia looking for a fourth successive victory here in Assen, was fourth fastest ahead of Fabio Di Gianantonio. Fabio Quartararo was sixth, Alex Marquez second, the World Championship, seventh of Johan Zarco, Fermin Aldeguer and Alex Rins. Further down the order, Pedro Acosta was 11th. Brad Pitt had a real tough morning session, didn't he, on the factory KTM? He was only 20th fastest and 1.7 seconds away from our leader, which was the number 93, leader in the World Championship, leader in FP1 this morning. But he is nursing a sort of pain in the left forearm, a pain in his left hand and a pain in his left elbow. This was at the back end of this morning. This was post FP1, where he went for some precautionary medical checks. This all followed a crash in fourth gear on just under 200 kilometers an hour at turn 15. He's going to be battered, he's going to be bruised, Lewis, but once again he was super fast and in P1.
Yeah, and in that conversation you can see Marc Marquez having there off camera. He was asked about the crash or what they told him in the Chiron. He said it's a hit, but I'm overall okay. And he was asked, are you going to be full gas then, or are you going to maybe leave a little bit of margin? You're going to take a bit of care later on? He said, I'll think about it, at least when I go through that corner, not the others.
Yeah, he might be sleeping with a couple of extra pillows for comfort tonight in his moto, because it was a big one, certainly the biggest we've seen Marc have in his factory Ducati career. barely knocked him out of his stride, though, did it, as he picked himself up and found a lap time which was over 3/10 quicker than his closest rival, Maverick Vinales. It's a concern initially when he landed in the gravel trap. This was then the painful start to Mark's Dutch TT, downshifting too quick, off throttle high side, and as he caught the lip between the tarmac and the gravel trap, that's what picked him up and flipped him over multiple times. Several big barrel rolls through the gravel trap for Mark. I think it was the initial impact. This, of course, is a flashback to a very similar crash he had back in the glory days at Repsol Honda. So he's been there and done it before, hasn't he, going through that rapid turn 15. Both of them very, very big crashes. This was in 2013, his rookie season, what, 12 years ago now. But Marc Marquez, the good news is he is all A-OK. There'll be a few bumps and a few bruises, but he's still smiling, and he is still the rider to beat here in Assen.
Yeah, there were 25 minutes between Marc Marquez being on the deck at Ranchuk and then setting the fastest lap time of the morning earlier on today on a 1:32.216. It was his third lap back out of the pits. Admittedly, he was, of course, on fresher tyres at a later stage in the session than everybody else in that session, but take nothing away from the lap and the ability that these riders have, which us mere mortals do not, have just been able to sort of compartmentalize a moment such as that, just lock it away in a box at the back of your mind and just focus on the job at hand and continue to put these motorcycles and your own body on the line. It was quite impressive from the World Championship leader this morning.
Certainly changed the Marquez master plan, though. Normally he will conduct the whole of FP1 on the same set of tyres, so he did have to go on to a fresh set of soft front medium Michelin rear tyres. His closest rival and the closest rival to Ducati last weekend in Mugello was once again Maverick Vinales. When you look at the World Championship standings and see Maverick Vinales stuck down in 11th place, the results don't really suggest that the pace and potential that Top Gun has had, certainly over the last 4 or 5 Grand Prix. Of course, denied a brilliant maiden KTM podium in Qatar for a tyre pressure penalty. And this weekend, in collaboration with Warner Brothers, I believe, he's sporting a special Superman helmet, Superman boots and gloves. Well, can he deliver a super performance to get himself directly into Q2 this afternoon? The Top Gun is once again flying for Tech 3.
And he was the sole KTM anyway near the front earlier on today, wasn't he? Next to the KTMs was Pedro Acosta in 11th place, although very difficult to take too much from what we saw earlier on today. Generally, what we see in that first free practice session is that they tend to use up some tyres that they're maybe not going to need later on in the weekend. Of course, it'll be certainly a soft rear tyre that we'll see adopted at the end of this practice session over 60 minutes. So Pecco Bagnaia there, of course, comes into this weekend over 100 points in arrears in the World Championship, and hoping that the return to the glory days, which he missed at Mugello, will be arriving this weekend. Another circuit here at Assen that he's got such a formidable record at.
I really hope and pray that we're going to see a replay of Fermin Aldeguer going through turn 12 at the end of practice this morning. Bike control off the scale, we are right on cue. Just look at this moment. Through turn 12, he's going to go 5th gear on a MotoGP bike, 200 kilometers an hour. And just look how sideways this Ducati GP24 is going. Now, that is not your normal angle of attack for turn 12. Unbelievable bike control in the end by the rookie, 20 years of age. I think his crew chief, Frankie Carcetti, put out on X this morning, post-session, change of underwear required, I think, for Fermin. He was able to have a bit of a laugh and a joke about it after the session. Yeah, that young fan there, don't worry, that's what we all looked like when we saw that moment for Fermin Aldeguer. Happy to see him come out the right side of turn 12, because that would have been a real big one. Aldeguer, he ended play this morning down in 9th place for the Gresini Racing squad.
Yeah, it was a top 3 that were made up of Ducati, KTM and Aprilias, but all Ducatis with the exception of Frankie Morbidelli were inside the top 10 earlier on today. Jorge Martin, of course, who is still much missed here on the MotoGP grid, continuing to ramp up his recovery ahead of what will be an eagerly anticipated return to action on board that factory Aprilia. Martin is certainly putting in the hard yards on 2 wheels. Hopefully he's back on a 2-wheeled motorcycle very soon.
Have not seen Martin, of course, since he suffered multiple serious injuries in the Grand Prix in Qatar. I know Jack's going to